Have you ever had that moment, you know, that moment when you know exactly what you should be doing?
Uh-huh.
Maybe it's, I don't know, hitting send on a really important email or making that difficult phone call you've just been putting off and putting off.
Right. Or even just like striking up a conversation with someone interesting you see across the room.
Exactly. You have this clear instinct, right? This little voice telling you, go for it. But then, well, then it hits you.
Yeah. That internal struggle, that kind of creeping hesitation that just expands in your chest.
And it stops you cold.
Yeah.
Right in your tracks. You're just paralyzed, stuck in your own head, watching the moment just slip away.
It's an incredibly common experience, that internal friction. I think we've all been there, standing right on the edge of action, only to get pulled back by some unseen force.
Feels like an invisible wall, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Even when the path forward is, like, perfectly clear.
Totally. That moment of pause, that 5-second window where your brain can either launch you forward or, talk you right out of it, that can truly be the kiss of death for so many opportunities.
Absolutely. And that's precisely what we're taking a deep dive into today. A powerful, yet honestly incredibly simple tool designed to shatter that cycle of hesitation.
And propel you into action.
Yeah, propel you to action.
Yeah.
We're talking about the 5-second rule by Mel Robbins. Now, this isn't just some catchy phrase you might have heard floating around online.
No, not at all. It's a profound method, really. One that promises to transform your life, your work, your confidence by unlocking what she vividly calls everyday courage.
So our source material for this deep dive, it's rich, it's multifaceted. We've basically distilled insights directly from Mel Robbins herself.
Right, drawing on her own very candid personal journey and also the fascinating scientific backing behind why this rule actually works so well.
And beyond the theory, we'll share some really powerful experiences of countless people who use this rule to make, truly profound, life-altering changes in their own lives.
Mm-hmm.
Our mission here in this deep dive is to unpack the core mechanics of the 5-second rule. Like, how does something so simple wield such immense power? Why does it work?
And we'll explore the captivating psychology behind its effectiveness. And maybe most importantly, show you how you can apply it.
Yeah, apply it to conquer that stubborn procrastination, maybe significantly improve your health and well-being.
Boost your daily productivity, enrich your most important relationships. Ultimately, we're kind of on a quest, aren't we?
We are, to help you uncover the everyday courage that honestly already lives inside you, just waiting to be unleashed.
So prepare for some genuine aha moments throughout this conversation. I think you'll discover how tiny 5-second decisions, when you make them consistently,
They can initiate monumental shifts in your life.
exactly, propelling you from just thinking about it to actually doing it, and ultimately unlocking your true, unexpressed potential.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Our journey begins with the genesis of this, surprisingly simple idea.
Mm-hmm.
And it came directly from Mel Robbins' own profound personal turning point.
Mm-hmm. And it's a story that's remarkably relatable because it starts, like so many breakthroughs do, with a deep struggle.
Right. Back in 2009, Mel Robbins found herself caught in this just relentless downward spiral. She was 41, facing significant, crushing issues across, pretty much every major aspect of her life.
Yeah, crippling financial problems, a career that felt totally stalled, and a marriage that was really teetering on the brink.
She described feeling utterly trapped, overwhelmed, truly defeated by her circumstances. Like she was just drowning in this sea of unspoken anxieties and, unfulfilled potential.
And the daily, almost symbolic manifestation of her losing control.
The snooze button, yeah. She talks about hitting it not just once, but 2, 3, sometimes even 4 times every single morning.
And this wasn't just about being tired, right? It was deeper than that.
Oh, much deeper. It was a profound act of defiance, almost like she was subconsciously saying, take that life. I'm not getting up to face this nightmare right now.
Wow. And by the time she finally dragged herself out of bed, feeling exhausted and ashamed.
Her mornings were a complete train wreck.
Yeah.
She talks about the kids consistently missing the bus, her racing out the door, forgetting lunches, backpacks. It just compounded the chaos.
Adding to that deep sense of shame, from dropping so many balls every single day.
This daily defiance, as she called it, became this deeply ingrained, closed-loop pattern, like a destructive bad habit encoded in her brain.
And she knew intellectually, didn't she? She knew what she needed to do.
Totally. Get up on time, make breakfast, actively search for a job, try to be nicer to her husband. But she simply couldn't make herself take action.
Her mind, in those critical moments, would just magnify every potential problem, every possible negative outcome.
Leading to overwhelming fear, paralyzing uncertainty, and just complete inaction. She spent so much time just thinking.
Which, ironically, only amplified her anxieties and made everything feel worse. Her life was in crisis, and yet she couldn't move.
And here's what really illuminates the universality of her struggle, and I think, you listening will probably relate to this. Her list of difficult, small things.
It's surprisingly common, isn't it?
It's so common. She mentions everything from speaking up in meetings, making tough decisions, just getting yourself to the gym.
Asking for help, updating a resume, or even just hitting send on an email that's been sitting in your drafts forever.
We all make these grand promises to ourselves every night, don't we? Tomorrow, I'll be the future me. I'll start fresh.
Yeah. But then the alarm rings, or that moment of opportunity comes up.
And the old you, the hesitant you, just wants to keep sleeping or stay quiet. That 5-second window of hesitation.
That brief moment where you talk yourself out of an instinct.
That was, for her, the kiss of death. It meant another day lost, another opportunity just gone.
The breakthrough, though, came from a really unexpected, almost accidental place.
Yeah, this is kind of cool. One night, she was about to turn off the TV, and this commercial for a rocket launch caught her eye.
And she vividly heard that iconic countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Right. Fire and smoke fill the screen. The shuttle majestically launches skyward. Simple visual, but profoundly impactful for her at that moment.
And just like that, an instinct sparked within her. It wasn't something she deliberated over, was it?
No, it was immediate, almost primal. That's it, she thought. I'll launch myself out of bed tomorrow, like a rocket.
I'll move so fast I won't have time to talk myself out of it.
Exactly. It was a simple, almost silly idea, really. One she could have easily dismissed as absurd, given how bad things were.
But luckily she didn't. She committed to acting on it.
So the very next morning, the reality hits. Cold, dark, winter morning in Boston. Every fiber of her being is screaming to stay under the covers.
She felt completely stupid, utterly tired. But she remembered her promise.
And she did something truly revolutionary. She ignored how she felt, instead of reaching for snooze.
She started counting backwards. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And then, despite all that internal resistance, she pushed herself up and stood. That was it. That was the exact moment she discovered what would become the 5-second rule.
An act of pure, unadulterated, everyday courage.
So, from that moment on, she made herself this clear, unwavering promise. If she knew something would change her for the better, something she intuitively felt she should do, she'd use the rule.
To push herself to do it, regardless of how she felt in that moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the results, while maybe small at first, were immediate. And they cascaded into significant transformations.
Like what? What did she start doing?
Well, she started getting up early, consistently going to the gym, making healthier choices like drinking less, becoming a more present and patient parent and wife.
Okay.
She'd even use it for seemingly minor things like putting down the bourbon bottle after maybe having one too many.
Yeah.
Or catching herself and correcting a bitchy tone with her husband mid-sentence.
Wow. So these weren't just small personal changes then. Pushing herself to take these simple, consistent actions, it created a powerful chain reaction.
Definitely. In her confidence, her overall productivity. And we see this with countless others who shared their stories.
Right, like Rachel, you mentioned her earlier. She used the rule just to get up 30 minutes earlier each day.
Yeah, and that seemingly minor shift wasn't just about waking up. It was the catalyst for her to lose 30 pounds, buy her first home, even reinvigorate her marriage.
Incredible. Or Rebecca, who used it and declared she felt free for the first time in 47 years.
It just illustrates how a bias toward action can dramatically increase your feelings of control over your life. That concept you mentioned.
Locus of control. The belief that you, not external forces, are the primary driver of your destiny.
That's fascinating. And it brings us perfectly into part 2, deconstructing the rule, how it works. Because at its core, the mechanism seems almost deceptively simple, right? Counting backwards?
It does seem simple, but it's far from arbitrary. That 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 countdown.
Yeah.
It's a direct, almost visceral parallel to a rocket launch.
A psychological prompt.
An ignition sequence.
Exactly, to literally launch yourself into action. And the number 5 itself, it wasn't chosen for some deep mystical reason. It just intuitively felt like the right amount of time.
Long enough to engage, but short enough to stop you from overthinking it.
Precisely.
And the backwards part is crucial, isn't it? I can imagine listeners thinking, Why not just count forward? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, there's a huge difference psychologically. Think about it. If you count forward, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Yeah.
you can just keep going, right?
Yeah, 6, 7, 8.
Cool.
Indefinitely. There's no inherent stop.
Exactly. No imperative to act. You can delay, procrastinate, just extend the count. But when you count backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2,
There's literally nowhere to go after 1.
right, it creates this finite window, a psychological cliff edge that forces immediate movement. Trent, you mentioned him, learned this the hard way.
He tried counting forward.
Yeah, to motivate himself. But he just kept counting endlessly until the moment for action just passed him by. It was only when he switched to the backward count that he found that irresistible impulse to move.
So counting backwards mentally shifts gears, asserts immediate control.
And distracts you from those insidious excuses that pop up so fast.
So the core benefit really is that it actively interrupts that pattern of hesitation that's so deeply ingrained in us.
Precisely. This is the critical insight. Within 5 seconds of having an instinct to act, whether it's speaking up, making a choice, getting out of bed, your mind's stop system kicks in.
That tiny, almost imperceptible hesitation.
That's the kiss of death, because it triggers your brain to think something's wrong, something might be dangerous.
Leading to overthinking, worry, and ultimately paralysis.
Right. The backward counting actively distracts you from those worries and consciously focuses your mind on moving in a new desired direction. It's a deliberate cognitive interrupt.
So what's the immediate impact then? When you physically move, even just putting your feet on the floor, taking one step instead of stopping to think.
Your physiology changes, and your mind almost automatically follows. The rule acts as what we can call a starting ritual.
A starting ritual, okay.
Yeah, and it immediately activates your prefrontal cortex. That's the executive control center of your brain.
The part responsible for focus, deliberate action, decision-making, initiating change.
Exactly. Before her research, Mel Robbins didn't even realize how deeply this simple technique impacted so many fundamental psychological principles, from breaking habit loops to providing that necessary activation energy to get things done.
It's no wonder then, is it, that Nike's famous tagline, "Just do it," resonates so powerfully.
That's right. The power isn't just in do it. It's in the profound simplicity of the word just. Nike intuitively understood that right before we act, we pause, we think, we hesitate.
Just do it acknowledges our universal struggle with fear and excuses.
Right. It tells us we're not alone in these small internal hesitations, but it also provides that clear imperative push to overcome them.
And that's where the 5-second rule truly shines, isn't it? It's that internal push when there's no external motivator around.
No coach on the sidelines, no competitor breathing down your neck, no screaming fan.
It's your own internal coach, your own personal launch sequence, urging you to push past that initial doubt and just get yourself into the game.
And you can even personalize it, right? While 5 seconds is the standard.
You can shorten it if your mind is particularly quick at making excuses.
Exact there. Or if the action feels overwhelmingly large. Matt, for instance, he was training for a tough mutter race in freezing cold weather.
Oof, tough.
Yeah. He found his mind could spin up at least 2 very convincing excuses within 5 seconds. So he had to shrink his personal window to 3 seconds.
3 seconds, wow.
He discovered that in 3 seconds, he could still override the initial resistance and just push the first button on his phone to get his workout music started. And that small act was enough to get him moving.
So the common thread among all these variations of 5-second rules, whether it's the mythical food on the floor rule,
Right. Or the actual basketball shot clock.
or this rule, is that they require physical movement within a short, finite window. It's about bypassing the overthinking brain and initiating immediate action.
Yep.
This leads us beautifully into part 3, the science behind the courage. Those fascinating psychological principles that explain why this seemingly simple rule is so incredibly effective, and maybe why it feels so uncomfortable at first.
Okay, so the first principle touches on decision-making and the profound role our feelings play. There's a neuroscientist, Antonio Damasio.
Ah, yes, his research is groundbreaking.
It really is. He reveals something critical. We make decisions based on how we feel 95% of the time, not solely on cold, hard logic.
He famously summarized human beings as feeling machines that think, rather than thinking machines that feel.
Exactly. It's a fundamental reversal of how many of us perceive ourselves, isn't it?
It really is. And his studies on patients who had specific brain damage and couldn't feel emotions, they're so illustrative.
Right. These individuals became utterly paralyzed when faced with even the simplest daily decisions. They could logically list all the pros and cons, articulate every rational argument.
But without the emotional component, Without that gut feeling, they couldn't actually choose. They were just stuck in an endless loop of analysis.
Exactly. Our brains are incredibly efficient. We subconsciously tally pros and cons and make a gut call in nanoseconds based on an emotional assessment.
So when you ask yourself, should I get up?
Mhm.
Or should I share my idea in this meeting?
Your subconscious isn't asking for a logical pro-con list. It's really asking, do I feel like getting up right now? Or do I feel comfortable and safe sharing my idea?
The crucial takeaway here is that you cannot control how you feel in any given moment.
But you can always choose how you act. Think about pro athletes. They consistently push past feelings of tiredness or pain in training. They don't act tired.
You can train yourself to do the same by separating your feelings from your actions.
That's a powerful distinction. But how does simply counting backwards bridge that gap between the feeling machines we are and the actions we know we should take? Is it just brute force willpower?
No, it's far more sophisticated than brute force, and it's deeply rooted in neuroscience. The countdown acts as a specific cognitive interrupt.
Okay, explain that.
Well, your brain, as Damasio showed, is wired for emotional evaluation, for comfort. But in those critical 5 seconds, when you initiate the countdown.
You're not trying to change how you feel about getting out of bed or making that call.
Exactly. Instead, you're giving your prefrontal cortex, your rational, decision-making willpower brain, a small, critical window.
To bypass the emotional stop signal, the
Yeah.
one coming from older, more primal parts of the brain like the amygdala.
Precisely. It's a strategic cognitive override. You're literally creating this micro-moment where logic and intention take precedence over immediate emotional discomfort.
Just long enough to initiate the physical action.
Right. And once the body moves, the mind often follows, creating a new emotional state.
And this connects directly to the concept of activation energy, doesn't it?
Yes. A term from chemistry, but brilliantly applied to human behavior by Csikszentmihalyi.
Famous for his work on flow.
Right. He defined activation energy as the initial huge push of energy required to change a state, whether it's moving a stalled car to get it rolling.
Or simply dragging yourself out of a warm bed on a cold morning. That initial push, he noted, is almost always uncomfortable.
And that discomfort, surprisingly, is exactly what you need to feel and then push through. It's important to acknowledge that resistance.
Embrace the discomfort of the start, because without that initial push, your brain will almost always default to doing nothing. It conserves energy, it stays in its comfort zone.
So when you start counting 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you're not just passively counting. You're actively initiating a chain reaction.
Awakening your prefrontal cortex and priming your body for that physical initial huge push needed to change.
Like Jerome from the Philippines wrote, "It feels uncomfortable because my body and mind are not ready, but I'm willing to practice it."
Yeah, and Kristen echoed this, saying, the first step, getting out of bed, is the hardest, but so worth it. They understood that discomfort was the indicator of growth.
Okay, and here's what truly eliminates the power of this rule. It also profoundly influences your internal locus of control.
Right. Introduced by psychologist Julian Rotter back in 1954, locus of control describes whether you believe you are in control of your own life, actions, and future.
That's an internal locus.
Or if you believe external forces largely determine your outcomes, an external locus.
And the research is really clear on this, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The more you believe you're in control of your own life and choices, the happier, more successful, and more resilient you'll generally be.
And a bias toward action, a willingness to make that first move that's guaranteed to increase those feelings of control.
The 5-second rule directly fosters this by forcing immediate action in moments of hesitation. As you use the rule more consistently, you'll naturally start to feel more courage, more confidence, more pride.
A stronger sense of control over your destiny.
Exactly. The rule will, as Mel Robbins says, haunt you in the best possible way.
How so?
Because it makes you acutely aware of how often you've been sleepwalking through life, missing countless opportunities simply due to hesitation. Daryl's experience, realizing how much control he'd given to his anxieties, is a powerful example of this shift.
And it goes even deeper, touching upon how our brains are wired. The rule helps break damaging habit loops and leverages the incredible power of neuroplasticity.
Right. Behaviors like hitting snooze or habitually overthinking, they become deeply ingrained closed-loop patterns encoded in your brain. Automatic responses that bypass conscious thought.
And the countdown shines as a pattern interrupt here.
It acts as a powerful circuit breaker. Counting backwards forcibly interrupts these default thinking patterns and helps you assert control over your autopilot brain.
It distracts you from your worries, focuses your attention on the immediate physical action.
Prompts you to act and, most importantly, interrupts the ingrained habits of hesitating, overthinking, holding yourself back. Tim, for example, found the rule allowed him to safely go for it on things he'd normally avoid.
Wondering why he was ever afraid in the first place. He was rewriting his internal script.
So, by consistently repeating the rule, you're not just beating resistance in that one moment. You're actively destroying destructive thought patterns over time.
Chronic worry, paralyzing self-doubt, fear.
You're literally replacing them with new, empowering habits of courage and action. This is the incredible power of neuroplasticity. Your brain isn't fixed. It can change. It can rewire itself.
You are reshaping your mind 1 5-second decision at a time.
Wow.
Now that we understand the core mechanics and the powerful science behind it, let's transition into part 4, the real-world applications and life transformation, how the 5-second rule can unlock things for you.
Okay, let's dive into how it revolutionizes productivity, helps you beat procrastination, dramatically improves health, and even enriches relationships.
First up, productivity and procrastination. They're often deeply intertwined, right? And the snooze button is the perfect, universally relatable example of how easily we derail our entire day before it even really begins.
Absolutely. Hitting snooze doesn't actually give you more restful sleep. It forces your brain to start a new sleep cycle, which is typically 90 to 110 minutes long.
So when that second alarm goes off, just maybe 15 minutes later, your brain's cortical region, the part responsible for decision-making and alertness, is still deep within that new sleep cycle.
This results in what's known as sleep inertia, that profound grogginess, reduced cognitive function. It can actually take up to 4 hours to fully wear off.
That feeling isn't necessarily from not getting enough sleep overall, but from repeatedly interrupting your brain's natural sleep cycles.
So the rule solution is elegant in its simplicity. When the alarm goes off, no snooze button.
You just count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you launch yourself out of bed. Like Morphin shared, woke up 1 hour earlier and will finally force myself to do some crap I don't feel like doing. Worth it.
Love it. The power of just getting up.
Mel Robbins herself details a very specific morning ritual too. She calls it 30 before 7:30 a.m.
Okay, what does that involve?
Strategically placing your alarm clock in the bathroom, away from your bed, so you are physically forced to get up to turn it off.
Smart. Prevents you from just rolling over and grabbing your phone, falling into that digital trap of email or social media before your day's even begun.
Exactly. Then, while you're brushing your teeth, you consciously, intentionally focus on just 1 or 2 musts for yourself and your big picture goals for the day.
Not just a random to-do list, but your SMART goals, your most important tasks that move your life forward.
Right. Then you get fully dressed before checking any devices. The underlying idea is to protect your brain's peak focus time.
Which is generally the first 2 to 3 hours of the day, right? According to behavioral economist Dr. O'Reilly, that's your prime time for deep work.
This specific morning ritual ensures you're focusing on your priorities before someone else's priorities hijack your day via emails or social media.
It ties into Parkinson's law too, doesn't it? Work expands to fill the time available for its completion.
Exactly. By planning and executing your most important tasks first, you become immensely more productive. Professor Soon Carlson's study of CEOs reinforces this.
Finding they were most productive working from home for 90-minute stretches precisely because they weren't interrupted like they were in the office where it happened every 20 minutes.
The rule helps you create that sacred, uninterrupted time for yourself.
We see this in practice with people like Mari, who started getting up before 5 a.m., followed a daily ritual for over 50 days straight, took control of his priorities,
and made significant progress on a new book he'd only dreamed of writing before.
Or Tony, using the rule to force himself back into the gym every morning at 5 a.m., rebuilding a lost habit.
Jeremy found the rule helped him be so much more productive and focus on the right things every single day. It really sets you up to be the boss of your day.
To activate your greatest, most productive self.
Okay, transitioning from productivity, let's tackle that other pervasive challenge, procrastination.
Ah, yes. The rule helps with both types. Mel Robbins distinguishes productive and destructive procrastination.
Productive procrastination. That sounds like an oxymoron.
Well, she explains it isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's a deliberate act of allowing your subconscious mind to work on a problem or a creative project that doesn't have a fixed deadline.
Like a creative incubation period.
Exactly. You've fed your brain the problem, then you step away, maybe go for a walk, do a simple chore, giving your mind space to connect disparate ideas, bring fresh insights, unburdened by direct pressure.
Okay, so it's an active, albeit indirect, form of problem solving.
Right. But destructive procrastination, that's an entirely different beast.
That's when we actively avoid necessary work, knowing there are negative consequences, pushing it off until the last minute or even beyond.
And it's crucial to understand this isn't laziness. It's actually a sophisticated coping mechanism for stress. Timothy Peichel, a psychology professor.
He studied this for almost 20 years, right?
Yeah, and he found procrastination is mainly about avoiding stress. Not the work itself, but often bigger life stressors, money, relationships, deep-seated fears of failure or judgment.
So when you blow off an important task for 15 minutes of online shopping or scroll endlessly through viral videos,
you're not actually being lazy. You're subconsciously seeking temporary relief and a quick dopamine boost from an easier, more pleasurable task. It's like emotional eating, but for the mind.
the problem is that temporary relief only compounds the stress over time as the avoided work piles up. It creates a vicious cycle.
Like Scott, who found himself procrastinating on crucial lab work because he was under immense financial stress at home. The lab work wasn't the real problem. His fear about his finances was.
Luckily, there are 3 simple, research-backed steps to beat destructive procrastination. And the 5-second rule is central to step 3.
Okay, what are they?
First, you need to forgive yourself. Sounds counterintuitive, maybe.
A little, yeah.
But science shows that self-forgiveness actually reduces future procrastination. Procrastinators are often incredibly hard on themselves, trapped in self-blame. This step helps break that loop.
Okay, forgive yourself. Step 2.
Identify the underlying stressor. Take a moment to acknowledge that the real stress isn't truly about the task itself, but often a larger life issue or an uncomfortable feeling it brings up.
Once you understand the deeper root cause, the immediate task becomes less intimidating because you've reframed the problem. Makes sense.
And finally, step 3, the most crucial. Just get started with the 5-second rule.
Dr. Pekel's favorite advice to chronic procrastinators, just get started.
Exactly. The rule acts as that perfect starting ritual, activating your prefrontal cortex, cutting through the emotional resistance. Each time you use it, it gets easier.
Daniela, for instance, used the rule to force herself to sit down and work on a daunting project. After just a few minutes, she felt empowered and capable.
Profound shift from her usual self-doubt. This taps into the progress principle. Even small wins, like just starting, dramatically boost your mood and productivity.
And once you've started, your brain even begins to nudge you to finish. Interesting.
Okay, next up, health and wellness. This is an area where we know what to do, right? Eat well, exercise, get enough sleep.
But our feelings constantly get in the way. The raw truth, as Mel Robbins highlights, is that you'll likely never feel like working out or eating healthy every single day.
The secret here is to act regardless of how you feel in the moment.
That's a tough pill to swallow for many of us, but it makes so much sense. Consider Anna on the spin bike. I never feel like working out, but did it anyway. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Or Melanie, who finally got off the damn couch and experienced freedom and breakthroughs. Erica lost 30 pounds after realizing she was never going to feel like working out and used the rule to force action.
Then there's Charlie, truly inspiring, weighed 383 pounds, 54-inch waist. He used the rule, day after day, to bridge that massive gap between who he was and who he desperately wanted to become.
Their stories underscore the power of consistent, small acts of courage. Mark committed to 5,000 push-ups in a month.
Wow, how'd he do it?
Used the rule and external accountability with friends. He described how the discipline in one area, forcing himself to do push-ups, when he didn't feel like it primed his brain for discipline in others, like finally starting to write that book.
That makes sense. Anouk echoed this after a tough workout. I really didn't feel like it, but did it anyway. Boom, boom, boom.
Love the energy. And Kristen reminds us, connecting back to activation energy, the first step getting out of bed is the hardest, but so worth it.
That initial push, though uncomfortable, yields profound rewards.
And it's not just about routine exercise or diet, is it? The rule, or the principle behind it, applies to even more serious health challenges.
Right. Like Greg Cheek, running 10 marathons after a stage 3 cancer diagnosis.
Or Amy Robach, the journalist, had her first mammogram live on air. She initially resisted, feeling healthy, but a push from a colleague.
Robin Roberts led her to make that 5-second decision to just do it. And it saved her life by detecting breast cancer early.
While Amy didn't use the specific 5-second rule countdown, she got that crucial external push.
Yeah.
The rule allows you to give yourself that exact same internal push when it truly matters most.
That's powerful. Okay, finally, let's turn our attention to how this simple tool can dramatically boost your confidence and enrich your relationships.
Yeah, because a common mistake is thinking confidence is innate,
Right.
something you either have or don't.
Or just a matter of personality. But Professor Brian Little, an expert on personality psychology, argues true confidence is built through consistent doings and personal projects.
What he calls free traits, behaviors we consciously adopt that might be outside our natural tendencies. It's about believing in yourself and your ideas.
And that's fundamentally fostered by taking action, not waiting to feel confident.
A fantastic example of this is the Introduce Yourself challenge Mel Robbins talks about.
Right. At that Cisco Live conference, she challenged the audience, use the 5-second rule, introduce yourself to 3 strangers.
And one engineer in the audience later found himself jogging just behind John Chambers, the CEO of Cisco at the time. Hugely influential figure.
His mind immediately flooded with excuses. It'd be rude, interrupting someone important. What would I even say?
But he caught himself, mentally counted 5, 4, 3, sped up, gently tapped Chambers on the shoulder, and bravely introduced himself.
That brave 5-second decision made despite overwhelming internal resistance. It led to an engaging conversation.
Chambers was impressed, gave the engineer the name of a senior person in innovation, told him to use his name to share an idea he had.
Wow. That single act of everyday courage transformed an ordinary moment into an extraordinary career-advancing opportunity and built immense, lasting confidence.
It wasn't about being extroverted, it was about taking that uncomfortable 5-second leap.
Then there's Bill, who bravely admitted, I have an issue being the real me. On the surface, great life, wife, kids, successful career.
But he wasn't living with genuine conviction. He had this ingrained habit of hesitating, overthinking, then never doing or saying what I should be doing or saying.
He felt he'd lost connection with people, but crucially realized he'd lost connection with himself.
The rule, by forcing action, helps bring the real you, your authentic thoughts and intentions to the table.
We see this confidence building in so many stories. Trace used the rule to finally lose weight, giving her the courage to attend her 30-year high school reunion, overcome years of self-doubt, felt unstuck.
Crystal, who used to second-guess every step, started using the rule to sit next to strangers, ask questions in male-dominated boardrooms, ask a VP for a business card.
And this series of small acts of courage cascaded into a new job, a big promotion, even a new house.
Nobo, after losing an executive role, used the rule to regain his confidence and push forward. These are all profound examples of how everyday courage, forged in 5-second decisions, builds genuine, unshakable confidence.
And the rule isn't just for personal growth, it's an absolute game changer for enriching relationships too, personal and professional.
Think about Tom at the bar, saw an attractive woman. His heart gave him the instinct. Approach her, but then hesitation.
Was it too soon? Would she go for a guy with 2 kids? In that 5-second window, he could have started a conversation, potentially rebuilt his life.
But he hesitated. Like so many of us, if you don't act on that instinct, the moment passes. You're left with regret.
The danger of silence in relationships, leaving important things unsaid, it's huge. It creates cognitive dissonance.
An uncomfortable mental conflict between what you truly feel or believe and what you actually do or say.
These unsaid things, these avoided conversations, build distance, resentment over time, like invisible walls. There's no mythical right time for hard conversations or expressing love or apologizing.
There's only right now. The rule gives you the push to speak your truth.
This resonates so deeply. Courtney used the rule to finally call her estranged father after years of silence.
Mike used it to be more honest with his wife about ignored subjects, feeling worthy in the process of finally addressing things he'd swept under the rug.
Anthony stopped expecting his wife to read his mind, courageously leaned into what I normally shy away from in their communication.
Leading to enormous change and a significantly closer marriage. He powerfully realized his silence was the problem.
And in some profoundly difficult cases, the rule can give courage for truly life-altering decisions. Estelle, during an ordinary moment, a stupid argument.
Acted on a deep-seated instinct she'd long suppressed and asked for a divorce. Despite the immense difficulty and fear, she never regretted it. Found her true self, eventually her soulmate,
Natasha, overwhelmed after her mother's sudden death, used the rule to speak from the heart about her relationship's unsustainability, a difficult conversation.
That paradoxically brought her and her boyfriend closer, leading to their engagement.
These stories highlight the fundamental urgency of connection, the devastating cost of hesitation. Mary Tacey Bezos's regret about not speaking to Josh in the grocery store before his sudden death. Sometimes there is no next time.
So powerful. And Josh himself, his mother shared, was the epitome of doing. Always acted on his intentions. Sent his parents a Happy New Year text hours before he was tragically killed.
It's a stark reminder. Leave nothing important unsaid. When that instinct arises, to connect, to speak, share your truth count. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just go ahead and say it. Don't let the moment pass.
As we near the end of our deep dive, it becomes just abundantly clear. Courage changes everything. And the most powerful revelation, the power of you is undeniable.
Indeed. It's so crucial to understand that courage isn't reserved for a chosen few. For historical heroes like Rosa Parks or Nelson Mandela, it's not something you're born with or without.
It's a birthright. It's inside all of us, a fundamental human capacity just waiting to be discovered and activated.
It's not a matter of innate confidence or a particular personality type. It's simply knowing how to find it and unleash it when you need it most. And when you need it, you'll probably be alone, relying solely on that internal push.
That's the push moment, that universal internal clash when your instincts, your intuition, your heart tells you to act.
Raise your hand, step onto the dance floor, make that sales call, ask someone out.
But your feelings, rooted in fear or discomfort, scream no. This is precisely where the 5-second rule comes in, providing that critical, immediate push.
You don't need all the answers. You don't need to feel ready. You just need to make a decision and take one small physical step in the next 5 seconds.
And here's the profound part. It's not always the grand, sweeping gestures that change everything. Far more often, it's the smallest, most ordinary, everyday, courageous actions that create this profound, unstoppable chain reaction.
Sleeping in, scrolling mindlessly, wasting time, that's always easier than taking action. But choosing to push yourself, even in a small way, consistently, that creates momentum.
A soaring sense of freedom, incredible personal power. Each small victory reinforces your ability to take on the next one.
Framing our daily struggles and hesitations as acts of everyday courage is mentally liberating. You might not spark a civil rights movement like Rosa Parks.
But by pushing yourself, by consistently choosing courage over comfort, you will change something equally important and profoundly impactful, your own life.
Rosa Parks herself didn't meticulously plan her iconic moment on the bus, did she? She simply acted on an instinct that had been building inside her in that 5-second moment of decision.
The terrifying alternative, if we choose an action, is to miss out on our own potential, to live life on autopilot.
Swimming right past all the magic, opportunity, and joy that your life has to offer simply because of fleeting feelings of fear or discomfort.
The greatest risk of all, as Mel Robbins powerfully puts it, is dying before you've actually pushed yourself to live.
But the transformations we've seen from people applying this rule are incredibly inspiring, a testament to its power. Dan, the hashtag 44-year-old freshman,
used the rule to finally register for summer finance classes, showing it's never too old to pursue a new path.
Shirley in Honolulu, after losing her husband, used the rule every day to push herself to start walking again, literally opening doors to a new life.
Julie in Santa Monica used it to push past nervousness, make those difficult cold calls, gained immense confidence, raised $5,000 for cancer research.
Pulkit in New Delhi taking so many risks, giving his best shot in his career and personal life, finishing his bachelor's degree after years of delay.
Kelly used it to make the bold, life-altering decision to move to France, embracing the unknown.
And Steve, tragically suffering from severe PTSD, found the courage to count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and walk away from a ferry railing he was considering jumping from, then immediately sought help, literally saving his own life.
Perhaps one of the most poignant is James. After his brother died by suicide, he used the rule to force himself to start running,
eventually completing a grueling 100-mile ultramarathon in his brother's memory, finding the unimaginable courage to move the mountain that stands before me.
These aren't just stories, they're blueprints for your own transformation.
Which brings us back to the central empowering theme. There is only one you, and there will never be another one. That's your power.
You truly have an innate, untapped power to move mountains, to change your life, to achieve what you never thought possible. You can't change the past. No one can.
But in 5 seconds, in that instant of deliberate action, you can fundamentally change your future.
So to recap our deep dive today, we've seen how the 5-second rule, this deceptively simple countdown, acts as an incredibly powerful catalyst for profound personal change.
It's not just a mental shift. It's a physiological trigger, a deliberate way to activate your brain's prefrontal cortex.
Helping you overcome crippling hesitation, silence that insidious voice of self-doubt, and tap into the innate, quiet courage that already resides within you.
Whether it's a monumental life decision that feels overwhelming or a tiny daily action you continually put off, the ability to interrupt your internal resistance and simply act is the secret.
The secret to unlocking true confidence, consistent productivity, vibrant health, and profoundly deeper, more authentic relationships.
It's about learning to listen to that quiet whisper of your heart and honoring your instincts, even and especially when your feelings scream, no.
So consider this as we wrap up. What impossible thing in your life right now is merely a small, uncomfortable 5-second push away?
What margin, what opportunity, what joy are you perhaps swimming right past day after day simply because of a fleeting feeling of discomfort or fear?
Your brain is brilliantly wired to keep you safe, to keep you comfortable, to keep you in your current state.
But true growth, genuine fulfillment, realizing your potential, it always lies on the other side of that comfort zone.
The time to reveal the greatness within you is not tomorrow. It's not when you feel ready or when you feel confident of. It's now.
What are you waiting for?
So go ahead. When your heart speaks, honor it.
5.4.3.2.1.go